everyone, Teresa here again, T-Mac for short. You already know the Women's Basketball League Africa is going on. That is the WBLA. It's taking place in Cairo, Egypt, and 12 teams have qualified. Now, usually the defending champions and the host teams get automatic qualifications, and then 10 other teams qualify from playing through the qualifications in each of their zones. The WBLA is a premier women's competition that takes place in Africa. This can be classified as the BAL for the women's category. So last season, Ferroviário Maputo of Mozambique won the championship, and Alali Sporting Club came second. APR of Rwanda came third. Now this year, we've seen a lot of other teams come in and they're ready, they're fired up. We could see from the games that started on Friday, that was FAP versus KPA. That game ended 64-83. And then the games that took place yesterday, FBR played against Alali, the host team, and the score was 62-91. Intense. Bravehearts Club played against CNSS. They lost to CNSS 42-66. ASVille de Dakar played against APR. That was a tough game. To me, that's my favorite game from yesterday. 78-71. It was neck to neck. It was intense. Both teams came prepared. Both teams were firing on their drives. In fact, like I said, that game is my best game from yesterday. And then we saw First Bank take on Ferroviário, 48 for First Bank and 85. It was a poor performance from the First Bank team, which we're going to talk about in this video. And then the last game was between Reg 67 against Sporting Club de Luanda 64. Now that we're through with the game results, let's talk about First Bank against Ferroviário Maputo of Mozambique. Ferroviário came in fired up. They were pushing the ball, they were driving, they were sharp on their drives, they understood where every player was. I mean, this is a team that has experienced players, right? This is a team that has players who have played in the finals of the WBLA multiple times, a team that has players who have played in the WBLA multiple times, you know, so they're experienced players. I'm talking Shiziani, I'm talking Mokaro, and the other players on the team. They were able to score from inside, they were able to score from outside, they had great ball movements, they were cutting through, you know, the middle. There were a lot of face cuts, there were a lot of second chance rebounds and then put back on their offense. They maintained that top, you know, championship mentality throughout the game, just showing class and then just showing that, you know, they're a resilient team. That was their first game. So I'm sure they wanted to make a point to the other teams that, yes, last year we won, but this year we're still coming to, you know, defend our title, and it's not going to be easy for any team. And that's how they came out against First Bank. Mind you, Ferroviário has won the WBLA 3 times, and First Bank as a team has won it just twice. But both teams have experienced the WBLA. So they already have a history as a team. Although player-wise, that's where it is different, because for First Bank, the players on the team, I would say, have less experience when it comes to the players on the Ferroviário team, because we have some of the players on the First Bank team who this is their first WBLA. Some of them, this is like their second experience at the WBLA. So compared to the players on the Ferroviário team, where we have players who have played multiple times, who have won or played in the finals, you know, up to 5-6 times, right? But that's not to you know, give any excuses for First Bank or try to, you know, excuse them from that performance yesterday. On the defense, Ferroviário were very strategic. In fact, they pressured First Bank to the point where they gained some more confidence, because when you come into a game, you're not coming into the game, you know, feeling relaxed like, oh, you've won the game already. No, you play, you study the team that you're playing, and then you decide to do some things. And that was what Ferroviário did. They started to put pressure on them, started to play full court presses, they started to channel them to the corner in the middle of the court, and then getting those steals. They got a lot of steals that gave them so many fast break points. They made sure to take every opportunities that they had. They were channeling them to the side. They were trapping them on the corners. In fact, Ferroviário were the aggressors yesterday. They started the push from the beginning, and they kept that push, regardless of the fact that they, you know, have what we would call older players. It didn't matter. They are a fast-paced team. Anybody that knows Ferroviário knows that they play a fast-paced game. So you coming in, you have to either maintain your own style of play, or you get to play their own style of play. And that was what happened with First Bank. They were rushing, there were no player identification on the offense, they were leaving wide open, fast breaks for Ferroviero. There were so many bad passes that Ferroviero forced them on because of their defense, and they were giving so many bad passes. They weren't calm on the offense. They rushed a lot of shots. They were not allowing, themselves to set up on the offense, because that's the kind of play that we know First Bank to play. They want to play set plays. They want to come together, pass the ball, do the moves where the post player comes up and screens for the other person, all those kind of things. Ferroviero weren't giving them the chance to do that. So they weren't able to, get through with their own plays. They weren't even able to get up to 2-3 passes, and then you're seeing steals and fast breaks from Ferroviero. It was somewhere about 4 minutes left in the third quarter that we began to see a little bit of, First Bank coming in. They were now playing, they were now pushing the ball, they were now, identifying themselves, turning down, good shots for better shots and all of that. But the first quarter was already their downfall, because Ferroviero scored, 34 points in that first quarter, while First Bank only scored 7 points. That's where they lost that game, honestly, for me. Normally in basketball, you would think that, okay, a more younger team, fast team would, on a good day, do better than a team that has, would I say, older legs. But that was not the case. Ferroviero players, they were intense, they were fast. I mean, they have some old legs on the team, but they still had some young legs that could run with the First Bank, players that were mostly young players. Defensively, First Bank, were just allowing too many face cuts. They were allowing too many second chances. They were getting out-rebounded. We're chasing after the Ferroviero team from the beginning of that game to the end, trying to stay in that game, trying to cut down, as high as 30-40 points difference in that game. And it was just not a good sight for First Bank, honestly, yesterday. First Bank scored 14 points in the fourth quarter, and Ferroviero could only score 15 points. So I think that was the closest compared to all the other quarters in that game. At some point in the fourth quarter, they held Ferroviero to 82 points for over 2 minutes. They couldn't score. That was good for them. If they had done something like that in the first quarter, I mean, the story wouldn't be what we're talking about now. But all the same, First Bank, coming in after 6 years of not being in the WBLA, and then coming in and playing against the defending champions in their first game, I think there's still room for them to improve. First Bank need to come out stronger in their next 2 group stage games. They'll still be playing against KPA of Kenya and then FAB of Cameroon. So let's look at the stats quickly. Field goal percentage, their shooting percentage was 25%. Really low. For Ferroviero, it was 47%. 2 points, First Bank have 27.5%. Ferroviero has 51.1%. For 3 point, First Bank were 20%. Ferroviero were 27.3%. It's not even that different. But on the free throw, Ferroviero has 70.6%, while First Bank has 53.9%. Now, here are the key stats. Rebounds, they out-rebounded First Bank, 53 to First Bank's 44. Offensive rebound, they had 21, First Bank has 17. Defensive rebounds, they have 32, and First Bank has 27. Second chance opportunities. Assists, they have 29 to First Bank's 15. On steals, they have 16 to First Bank's 9. Blocks, 3-3 for both teams. And then turnovers, First Bank has 25 to Ferroviero's 14. That was when they were beginning to force them to cause some turnovers in the fourth quarter. Points of turnovers, Ferroviero has 36 points to First Bank's 15. Fast break points. This is where Ferroviero just took the game from the first quarter. Every quarter they had fast break opportunities. They had 40 points to First Bank's 9. On second chance points, they had 13. First Bank has 12. Points in the paint. 42 points for Ferroviero to First Bank's 12. And then points from the bench, Ferroviero has 42 and First Bank only had 27. Today, First Bank are going to be playing against KPA of Kenya. KPA won their first game on Friday against FAP, 83-64. So they already have one win. And of course, Ferroviero has one win from this group. For First Bank to be able to move to the next stage of the competition, they need to be first, second, or at least third in their group. So let's see what they do against KPA, who already have one win. Thanks for watching. So let's continue to see what the ladies in Africa do in the WBLA. Until my next video, T-Mac out.